Hey, welcome back to Pave the Way podcast. I'm your host, Greg Helbeck, and I'm here with Brandyn Schwalm. And Brandyn, are you in a WeWork right now with a WeWork cup?
I am.
No shit. I didn't know you were a WeWork, dude. I'm literally across the country in a WeWork.
We're your typical millennials.
Are you are you in a conference room right now at a WeWork?
I am.
Oh, I just got kicked out of a conference room, so now I'm in a little. Do they have these phone booths in your office?
Yeah, but I don't know. It feels like a prison in there. I kind of like the view better of like that.
Yeah, yeah, I would definitely say that that looks pretty nice. So listen, man, it's cool to have you on the show. We connected a couple months ago, I think, and we had dinner in San Diego. And thanks for paying the tab due to credit card roulette. So I figured we bring you on here, man. We were talking about this for a little bit. So you're doing some really cool things, virtually wholesaling, actually making like real money in this business, and you're not one of these guys who's all BS. So looking
Yeah.
forward to kind of talking about your journey, how you got started, what you're doing today, and I like how you're a big lifestyle guy. So really looking forward to getting into it, man. So thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome, dude. So before we kind of get into what you're doing in real estate, like you're young. What are you, 27? I think
Yep, 27.
you're 27. So what were you doing before you got into this real estate business?
Well, I actually got started in real estate relatively young, not as young as you, but I got started at 23. But before real estate, I basically spent the first like 3-4 years of my entrepreneurship journey in the network marketing industry, selling energy drinks, selling services, stuff like that. So I was doing that for a couple of years. Never made more than like 2-3 thousand a month in that, and then basically after the last venture failed, I had a good friend of mine that was flipping houses. I started picking his brain on how exactly he was doing it, and then I worked for him for like 6 months and started on my own. That's kind of how I got into the industry.
So you worked for him. I did something very similar. Like, were you like an acquisitions manager or something like that? And then you like were like, I'm an entrepreneur at heart. Like, why the fuck am I taking percentage of this when I can just make all the money myself?
Yeah, I mean, that was a big, I was basically ahead of their whole like probate department because at this point in their business, they had done no off market deals. It was all like auction deals where they were buying houses at auction. And obviously, like 2-3 years ago, or 3-4 years ago now, that was all drying up from all like, especially in Florida with like all the Chinese investors and, all the shows coming out about flipping houses. So that's when they had to kind of pivot to doing like off market deals. And I was kind of the head of dealing with all the off market, specifically at that time, probate. But I was getting paid like $1,500 a month. I was, and then I was getting, I think, like 20% of profits on doing all the work. So it just, I didn't really think it made much sense when I'm like, I feel like I could do this myself and make a lot of money.
Yeah, right. It's funny you say that because I remember like I made I was 10%. This is back like a couple years ago, like 3 years ago. I remember the guys I was working for who like now are some of my really good friends, and now they call me sometimes. It used to be the other way around. They're like, hey, how do you do this direct mail thing? And like, so I remember I made like $2,000 or some shit, and they made like something crazy, and I was like, wait a minute, all I need to do to make that money, because I bought the property off the seller, I just need to get the lead, and I would have made that money. So then I'm like, all right, I'm gonna do this on my own. So I mean, obviously you started doing that. What was some of the biggest, I guess, lessons you might have learned from working with someone? And then we're going to transition more into like how you built your business to where it is today. So like, what were the biggest lessons that you learned just from working for an investor that you were able to take and obviously use to build your own business?
Well, I think for me in particular, I'm just always had an entrepreneur mind, and I just always knew that I kind of wanted to be the one that had all the responsibility and calling the shots and doing all that kind of stuff. So it was really tough for me to work for someone else. I'm not gonna lie, it was not something I was very good at. I couldn't take no very well, and I had when we were working together, I had these ideas of like stuff I wanted to implement, but obviously that stuff cost money, and they weren't willing to spend money. So there was like a lot of headbutting there, and I just felt like if I just got my hands on, I mean, at that time I was making no money. So like, I was like, if I could get my hands on some money to start marketing, then I could, figure it out.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Yeah, it's like you want to like help them build their business, but you really have no upside with that either. So you're like, even if I bring value here, like there's such a cap on what you can make, even if you're in sales. Like
Yeah.
I think when you get in a situation where you almost create money out of thin air, like you do a deal, you make 15, 20 grand, you're like, holy shit,
Yeah.
like this is interesting. And then you can just keep doing that. So what did your, like, as you started to transition into like your first, initial, I guess, entrepreneur real estate journey, at least, I mean, what did your like first couple deals kind of look like? Because I know you didn't wholesale originally. You were like fix and flipping, I believe, and then you transitioned into wholesaling, and then we're going to get into what your business looks like today.
Yeah, so at that time, basically, I had met a gentleman at a networking event in Orlando. He told me that, I told him about what I was working on, what I'd be interested in doing with like fixing and flipping. He had the funds, so we were willing to do a 60-40 flip or split where I got 60%, he got 40%, and then basically from there, I basically spent like 15 grand on my credit card and bought a bunch of mailers and sent out a bunch of mail. And the first like $12,000 I spent on mail, I think I got one deal, and I was like panicking because I'm like, oh my God, like it's just not, I don't know what's gonna happen. Like, and honestly, the one deal we got in hindsight was shit. Like it was bad. I think we broke even on it, which I've only broke even on like a couple of deals in my life. And of course it's like your first one, but I just kept the faith. And then no joke, like the next like 3,000 I had spent on mailers, we got 3 deals. And then those 3 deals, one of those deals was like a 50K wholesale deal where I bought it and just threw it on the MLS and made 50 grand. And then the other 2 were like really good fix and flips. So that basically took me out from like, I think for the first like 6 months of those, first 6 months of that year, I made like 10 grand total thus far. And then like the last 6 months of that year, I had made like 150. So like my life from like 0 to 150 in like fast.
Isn't that crazy when that happened? That happened to me last year, and it's like the fucking craziest shit. You're like, wait a minute, because it happens so quickly, and you don't even know what's going on. You get these checks in your bank account, and you're like, wait a minute, isn't it like it's like your whole life almost changes? You're like, wait a minute, this is so weird. You're not used to it.
No, it was surreal. Like working so hard towards something the whole life and wanting like to be, making a good amount of money when you're young was what I always wanted, and to finally had hit it, it was a crazy feeling.
Yeah, man, totally. It's awesome. I hope this inspires a lot of younger people listening to this because it is obviously possible. So you're fix and flipping, you're wholesaling. Are you doing this in Tampa and Orlando? Or are you doing this because you live in Miami, but your businesses are really in Miami or in Tampa and Orlando? So where are these deals going down?
So at that point, it was only Orlando because the contract that I was using then would only like flip within like an hour and a half of Orlando, which Tampa was just like right outside of it.
Okay, yeah.
So I only did flips there. Basically, I stopped really doing flips after I moved to Miami. I was doing them for like 6 months when I lived in Miami, but like trying to deal with it all virtual from here was very difficult. And I always knew I wanted to like live in Miami once I could afford the Miami lifestyle. And so that was like, well, I'm not going to move back to Orlando, so I have to like pivot to something else. And that was when I switched over to primarily wholesaling.
For sure, man. And what year did you primarily switch over to wholesaling before we get into your business today?
I think it was the beginning of 2018, the beginning of it.
So it wasn't that long ago that you made that transition into wholesaling.
No, yeah, so almost 2 years.
Okay. So this is where the listeners are going to get really excited. So what does your business look like today from like a monthly deal volume perspective? Because it's very impressive. When we were eating dinner that one night, I was blown away.
I mean, The last couple months have been really good where we've been averaging like 200, 250 a month. But before that, we were typically averaging like 120, 150.
This is of just revenue.
Yeah, gross profit.
Yeah. And how many deals would that make up of? Like how many properties usually per month we're going down with that type of volume?
Well, like we tend to get like 12 to 15 under contract, sometimes more. But then like, obviously with title issues or, a property falls out of contract for one
Yeah.
reason or another, we tend to close between like 10 to 12 a month.
10 to 12 consistent deals closing a month, and it's pure wholesaling. There's no more rehabbing, no more wholetailing, like no rentals, just all wholesales.
All wholesales right now, yeah.
Okay. And then in terms of like with that type of volume and revenue, are you seeing like maybe half of those deals are smaller wholesale fees and then the other half are relatively larger, or is it pretty much consistently like 10 to 15 to $20,000 spreads per deal to make up that revenue?
Yeah, I mean, our average is probably around like 15 to 18. But yeah, I mean, you're definitely gonna get some small ones and some big ones. I mean, we get at least like one and a half 30K deals plus a month.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Like
And
last month we had 30K deals.
is that because, and it's funny when I get fees like that, or usually those are more if I close and flip the house, but
Yeah.
when I get a wholesale fee like that, usually it's one of two things. It's either the seller sold me the house at an amazing price, or I have sold to a buyer who overpaid. It's not really both, but are you seeing more of the sellers getting really kind of, selling at a discount, or are you finding buyers now who are paying way more than your typical buyers? Because it's interesting
Well,
with me with the wholesaling.
I think it's a combination of both, to be honest, because I've almost always noticed that the deals that I make the most money on are when we're able to get a number out of the seller and you're like, oh shit, I know I could pay that number and I know it's a good number, but I don't want to be like, oh yeah, let's do that right now. Let's sign right now. So obviously you got to play a little bit of hardball with that. But yeah, I've noticed for the most part, our best deals tend to be those when they're willing to just give us a number and it's a great number. However, this year in particular, I've really, really focused on building a really good buyers list. I have one disposition manager where his only thing is to sell all of our deals. So doing that has added, like, I think the year before our average wholesale was like 12,000, and now it's on average probably 16, 17 for sure.
Damn,
So just by hiring someone else and like solely focus on building that buyers list, because when I started, all I gave a shit about was acquiring and getting the best deals, and I was not paying much attention to finding and building a good buyers list. And that was like what I started realizing was my weakness, and that's when I started like throwing a lot of money into building a buyers list and not being afraid to like do whatever it takes to find buyers that are willing to pay more, because the ones that tend to pay more are the ones that like they're the guys that will do like one or two a month, but they tend to do the work themselves, so they manage rehabs themselves. Those tend to be the ones that pay the most.
Yeah, no, and that's what I've seen too. Like a lot of the guys who are easy to sell to are like not paying. They're basically trying to get it for what I have, or like maybe like $5,000 above. And I'm like, to do all the work to get this for the marketing, I'd rather just buy this myself if that's what you're going to pay wholesale wise. But we've done a lot of stuff where like we put properties on Zillow. I mean, it's legal in New York. I'm not an attorney, but we've done that. We've found blind Craigslist ads. It's really like a pain in the ass, but you get these people who you would have never found on your list. Obviously, you add them to your list, and then those people are like, they don't really know what ARV even means. They just want the house and they have money. So that's always obviously a good thing. So, you're doing the volume, you're doing, a good amount of, a lot of revenue. So what are you guys doing to market for these deals? Like for sellers, at least, like just some high level stuff.
I mean, I do cold calling, SMS, RVMs, and mailers, and a little bit of Facebook.
Okay. What would you say your favorite channel is right now that's maybe either the easiest to work or the most productive in terms of like, cost per lead, et cetera? And then we'll kind of chat a little bit about that.
I would say probably cold calling and SMS probably produce the most leads for us.
Cold calling and SMS. Interesting. Okay. And then are you kind of doing like with that, are you focused more on like niche? Like what are you kind of like, if someone wants to get into cold calling or SMS, would you say, because this is like a big debate I hear a lot, it's like, do you want to go niche lists or do you want to try to go to the lists that like in the hot zip codes where they might not be distressed? I have several kind of thoughts on that. I do a little bit of both, but at least from where what I've seen, like the most profit on a lot of these lists, it's like the niche lists for me in my market in New York are always usually the best ones. But then some people don't like that because then those leads can be anywhere basically.
Yeah. So for me, I do both. I pull data from the courthouse weekly and obviously hit them. But at the same time, like if you own a house in any of the zips or any of the counties that we market in, you're probably gonna have been reached out to us at some point.
That's good. You get a lot of angry people when you're sending, when you're doing the calling and texting.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Especially with RVMs and whatnot too. I mean, one of the things that I like about RVMs is that they tend to be dealing with a lot of crap, but when you get a deal, they're good deals. We closed a 44K deal in end of September. That was an RVM.
It was off an RVM, so when you get a lead off of RVM, it's a quality lead. It's like bandit signs when I started.
Yeah, exactly. Because if they're calling back a random voicemail, it's probably some motivation if they're not calling back to tell you to F off.
Yeah, no, that's funny, man. I've never done RVM, so I can't say like I agree, And before we kind of like pivot on to some other things, I mean, you said Facebook. That's actually something that I'm in the middle of testing right now. I have somebody who I know from high school who actually lives in Tampa, but he's doing the Facebook ads for me up in New York. And I got one deal under contract so far, I think out of 11 leads, but the leads are like, I don't know, like they're pretty good. I'm not going to say they're like PPC quality, but they're probably a little bit better than mail. I mean, what are you seeing on your side with Facebook? Because I don't have enough data to really make a decision. And it's, I think, way too early for me to like really, put a legitimate, like, okay, this is like something we can really talk about.
So I started Facebook like consistently like a month ago. We got one deal. It had cost me $5,000 so far, which tend to be towards the higher end for me.
That's pretty high.
Yeah. We made 15 on it. So it's all right.
It's not bad.
But the problem is like, it's such a small sample size for me to know if it's really worth keep doing. But as of right now, yeah, I mean, I feel like you need a couple of deals to really get a gauge for what the actual cost per deal is. Whereas if you only done one deal and it costs $5,000, it may not be a true accurate measurement of what your cost per deal is and if it's worth spending the money there or worth spending the money somewhere else.
Yeah. And I'm seeing a lot of the Facebook stuff. I mean, do you have like a service doing it for you, or are you just kind of running it yourself? Because it's like I'm just targeting like the guy that I'm doing it, like I'm paying him a wholesale fee on the deal or whatever, but like I think he's just targeting areas. Like we don't have like maybe people who own a property who live in an area. We're not like uploading our list to Facebook and like targeting them that way. We're just going straight into like cities and stuff.
Yeah, we're testing both. We're testing. I mean, because I already, like I was telling you before we get jumped on this, I have well over 1 million cell phones and emails of prospective sellers. So I've tried uploading them and I've tried just doing blanket areas. Can't really see, I mean, like I said, we're only doing one deal, so it's really hard for me to say if it's, which one's working better than the other.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I think it's something that, at least for me, that the cost per lead, I don't think was as much as you, but every market's different. But getting some mixed stuff. I think I can get a lot of people that no equity, but then I'm getting some pretty motivated people that maybe I could do creative financing on. So yeah, I think time will definitely tell there. So, I mean, my question for you is, I mean, dude, you're a couple years older than me. You're absolutely knocking it out of the park. You're doing super well. What do you think has made you successful, compared to a lot of other people who want to be in this business? I mean, I'm a big believer in like getting like one or two good pieces of information and running with that instead of like getting like the 5 success secrets, right? Like, what is the one or two things that you've done that have have this successful business, like whether that's team or marketing or whatever the case is. And then people can listen to that and be like, wow, it's that simple, or, you know, just so they can kind of get 1 or 2 nuggets instead of 5. I think less is always more, man.
Yeah. I mean, it's really tough for me to say like one thing or 2 things because, you know, business is a lot of different variables, but I think I'm just not scared. Like I think most people they're scared to take risks. They're scared to spend money. I was poor as shit. I never made more than 20 grand ever at this point in my life when I started, and I got into 20 grand worth of credit card debt. Why? Because I wasn't scared. I was like, well, in worst case, if it doesn't work out, I'm 20 grand in credit card debt. Oh well, I'm 23. I'll figure it out. Like I was never afraid to take risk, and like I'm always like trying new things, like the Facebook or PPC or SMS, RVMs. Like I'm always not afraid to throw $10,000 at something, $15,000 at something, and be like, okay, this works. Now throw more money into it. Like, and I think a lot of people in our niche, like they get money in and then they don't tend to reinvest it, or they're just scared to take like little chances. Like I'm not scared at all to spend 50 grand, 60 grand every month. I know it'll come around. And I think that's a big problem that a lot of people have, is that they're not able or want to take risks, where it's like, you know, it's a double-edged sword, trust me, because, you know, I've lost well over 6 figures in being a dumbass and investing money in stuff that I shouldn't have done. So it is a double-edged sword, but in this scenario, I think that's really benefited me.
That's interesting, yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's something I'm just starting to do more of now. Like, you know, as I've done better in real estate, like I'm spending more money just in marketing and stuff like that. Like it's not what you're spending, but like I'm getting more comfortable to doing that, I think. And like, you know, I think initially when you start making more income than you're used to, you're like, oh, I want to keep this, you know, I want to save this. And it's good to do some of that. I like saving, but at the same time, like, hey, if I can spend 3 grand on marketing to make 20, how many times are you going to freaking do that? Because that's just going to compound over time. I mean, we're going to get a return on that. So that's interesting, man. So I want to kind of talk about, you know, you met me in person in San Diego. Your business is in Florida. You were in Arizona recently. You're all over the place, man. You live in Miami. I mean, to do this truly virtually, where like you're not on the phone all day, like what are some of your kind of tips for really having that, I guess, travel lifestyle? I mean, what are some things that you really like look out for? Like basically how important is it for you to have a real successful team? Like in order for you to be able to do this? Because I do it virtually, but I'm way more involved than you are in my business, right? I don't have a big team or anything like that. So like, do you think your team is really like the linchpin on how you can kind of travel all over the place? Before we met in San Diego, I think you were up in Northern California for like 2 weeks or whatever. So like you figured something out that a lot of people have trouble with, you know?
Yeah. Well, and the funny thing is from now until the end of the year, I won't be home in Miami for 1 weekend until New Year's. I'll be in somewhere else from every single weekend until then.
Where are you going?
Well, this weekend I'm going to Austin. The next weekend after that is the Tony Robbins event. The weekend after that, I'm going to Sarasota. The weekend after that, I'm going on a ski trip. The weekend after that, I'm going back to Sarasota. The weekend after that, I take my company retreat to Costa Rica. Weekend after that, I go to Malibu. Weekend after that, I go to Dominican Republic. And then weekend after that, Sarasota, then back home Miami.
Wow.
Yeah.
So basically, if you didn't have a team, let's say you were doing, you know, would that be even remotely possible? Could you pull it off all virtually or what? Because this is where I think a lot of people.
Remotely possible. Because in 2017, 6 months of the year, I spent traveling a month at a time with my friends that were all wholesalers as well, in different parts of the country, just basically living there for a month at a time, and was still wholesaling, or was still flipping actually primarily at that point, and doing deals. So it is possible, but for sure, I couldn't do it on the volume that I do it and make the amount of money that I'm making without a kick-ass team. I mean, they handle like 90% of the business.
Yeah,
You know,
no, it's interesting.
I'm there to put out fires. I'm there to spend the money on marketing, make sure all the marketing is going out and doing all that kind of stuff. And besides that, I never talk to any sellers and never talk to any buyers. I basically only talk to sellers or buyers if I'm trying to put out a fire.
Huh.
That's it.
Is that really the main, like your main involvement? Like you're like, you literally just deal with the marketing, making sure everything is going out. Like, so when you get dragged into something, it's like something that's really urgent. You're not like dealing with like the bullshit transaction coordination or like, hey, what should I offer this person? Like that, you're completely out of that now.
Yeah, I mean, I do help a lot with comps just because that's something if someone messes up, like that could take your business from doing 15 deals a month to 5 because they're way off on what you should be offering.
Yeah.
So I still have a decent amount of that. But yeah, I mean, in regards to like transaction coordinating or anything, like I won't really get involved unless I'm trying to make sure this deal doesn't fall through. The last time I did it was like a month ago, which before that was a while. But last month we had like a 33K deal, and the seller was trying to back out because of some title issues and whatever. So then I took over, dealt with the seller, tried a different title company. That title company ended up being able to do it. But during that whole time, I was like, massaging the seller and making sure everything went okay.
Yeah. So it's worth your time when you're going to make 33 grand.
Yeah, exactly. If it's a 33 grand deal, I'll talk to a seller. But, he just felt great in like, for whatever reason, because he was talking to the owner. That was like what he liked.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, the point is like, you're not afraid to get back into the weeds, and freaking,
I mean, when I started, I did everything. I was acquisitions, I was dispo, I did everything. So like, I'm not afraid to do anything. And I used to until like the beginning of this year, I used to, because I used to only have 2 acquisition managers. If one of them was out on vacation or whatnot, I would then come back in and do calls. And I was like, God damn, I really hate that.
Yeah,
So now
right.
I hired a third one.
It's a
So
pain
now
in the
it's
ass, man.
easier.
Yeah, totally. Well, as we wind the show down, man, I think I want to, one more thing I want to cover. I haven't done this in a while on the show. So I want you to briefly cover your best deal ever. And then I want you to talk about the worst deal you've ever done. Just real quick, within 5 minutes total.
Okay.
And then we'll wrap it up. So
Um,
let's start with your best. Actually, let's start with your best deal. Just whatever you think, whether it's profit wise or craziness, whatever the case is. I'll let you.
well, the best deal we ever did was, I can't remember the exact number, but it was high 60s, low 70s, somewhere around there, because I ended up having to give this lady money out of pocket. And long story short, this lady, her husband passed away, and the bank was foreclosing on her house because she could no longer afford it. She had some like heroin addict living with her, and then she had like 15 cats, which like 6 of them were dead, and it smelled like shit, according to one of my guys. She didn't have enough money to keep the water on, so I had one of my employees drive there and pay $500 to turn the water on, give her $500 so that she had enough money to eat. And it was an absolute mess. But we made, it was somewhere in the high 60s, low 70s after everything. I remember in order for her to be able to close, she needed her car, but then her car was in the shop. So then I had to pay like the shop $3,000 to fix her car. Like I was out of money a lot. And it was like multiple times where she was going crazy. I was like, I'm just going to cancel. I can't handle the stress. And so I'm talking, like once I knew how much money this deal was, I took over the deal. I was like, I'm not letting anyone else have that responsibility. And so, yeah, we ended up finally being able to close it. And
That's crazy, dude.
Nice deal.
That sounds like an Orlando deal, if I had to guess.
Yeah, no, it was in right by Disney.
Oh, it was in Orlando. I thought it because I was like, I'm 50% right there, or 50% chance.
Yeah, well, it was an interesting deal. And then my worst deal was so I was helping this newbie wholesaler in Jacksonville, and you might have heard this in the Steve Train podcast. I was helping this newbie investor in Jacksonville. He had a buyer at 120. He had it at 90, and then he had the buyer's 5K deposit 2 days before closing. The buyer couldn't close, so he asked me. He's like, "Hey, I got $5,000 deposit. If you're willing to pay me $5,000 more, I'll be I'll make $10,000, which I'm happy with because I'm new and whatever, and you'll get the house at 95, and you could probably make more money because you're still in the MLS." So I was like, okay. So I paid for it, and I bought it at 95. Had it under contract had a buyer at 140, had a buyer at 130, had a buyer at like 115. All of them kept falling through, and then eventually, like, it sat again for like 6 months. I'm just like, God damn. And then the highest offer we got was like 70. And so then I had to end up selling it for 70. And I ended up taking, after everything, like a 30K bath.
How did you get the funds to close on that one?
Just a private lender.
Oh man. What do you think the reason on that was? Because that's interesting. Because like I've done some funky deals and I always get a little nervous with that. But like, was it a weird house or was it in like a shitty zip code? Like Jacksonville is kind of hit or miss. Like depends where you are over there.
The issue was, and I didn't take this into context when it happened, was the rehab. Like, dude, the numbers on it were phenomenal. I mean, the house was worth like 330, 350 fixed up.
Oh shit.
So it was a good deal. The problem is it was like 100 to 150K rehab.
Yeah, I just had one of those. I
can handle that, right?
Yeah.
So you're looking for tiny amount of investors that can handle that kind of rehab. And I think that's something that I didn't think about. I was just like, dude, this is a home run deal. Someone's going to buy it from me for like 140. They're going to put 120 into it. They're going to be in it for 260, and they're going to make 90. And
yeah.
But I didn't know Jacksonville very well at that time. I had done only a couple of deals there. I didn't really know. So it just went from like, I'm going to make an extra like 40K on this deal to I'm losing 30K on this deal.
Wow.
Yeah. So it sucked. And like, since it was a private lender, I had to pay the whole 30K bill too.
Oh man. Yeah. You had to come to the table with a check. You had to write the check. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's part of the game. It's part of the game.
Part of what I was telling you about before, I'm not afraid to take risk, and sometimes it backfires.
That's it, man. Well, I appreciate it. This has been a fun show, man. If people were trying to get in touch with you, they want to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to reach out and chat?
Yeah, I mean, you hit me up on Facebook or Instagram, and it's Brandyn Schwalm. How you spell my name?
Awesome, man. All right, well, we'll put your Instagram in the let me just make sure it's in the show notes here. Cool. All right, man. Well, we got your link there in the show notes, so I'm sure some people will reach out if they wanted to connect with you, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show, man. That was a lot of fun. I learned a lot myself, and hope you have a good rest of the day.
Thanks, brother. You too, man.